Today's bonus episode is an interview with Michellle Abraham. I published the full interview on Tools of the Podcast Trade, but I wanted to publish a shortened version of her interview because it was originally scheduled to be recorded on SoloMoms Talk. But because she's a podcaster and because she's in the podcasting business promoting other podcasts, we decided to do a double interview. So in this part of the interview, we talk about her role as a mother and how her and her family live their dreams through making drastic decisions to change their lives. Michellle is not a solo mom, but her story will resonate with you as a mom, as a career mom, as a mompreneur, and as someone who has dreams. Thank you for listening.
Tired, weary, frustrated? What would you be doing if you weren't raising children alone? What's stopping you from living your best life now? On SoloMoms Talk, I discuss with solo mothers the challenges you face raising children alone. So if you're a working solo mom dealing with independent children, insensitive bosses, weight and health issues, or even debt collectors, join us as we discover your path to get and stay healthy, increase your income, and live with joy and purpose.
In this battle of life, it's hard to keep your head above the water. So win this fight.
My guest today is Michellle Abraham, host of the Blissful Parenting Podcast, and so much more. Welcome, Michellle.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jen. I'm excited to dive in today.
Thank you. And the first thing I like to ask is, tell us, who is Michellle?
Oh, that's a loaded question, Jen. It could take us a while to answer that question. So to be brief, I am a mom, an avid traveler, lifelong adventurer, and I am an entrepreneur of almost 20 years. And I just love entrepreneurship and have two kids, 10 and 7.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks for sharing. And you may have dropped only a couple of sentences, but you've dropped a lot in those couple of sentences. So, all right. So you're the host of a podcast about moms. Tell us about the podcast, why you started it, and what is that like for you being a mom? I know you're not a solo mom, but that's fine. You're still a mom. Tell us about that experience.
Sure. Well, some days it feels like it's solo, but I am a mom, and I did start my podcast when my kids were young. And the parenting podcast I do host is one of 3 podcasts I host. And so it's called Blissful Parenting. What I love about this podcast is, my business and my company is in the podcasting space, helping people launch podcasts and manage them. But this podcast, the parenting podcast, is like a passion project of mine because it is where I learned to be a better parent. And I feel like I've had hundreds of hours of free parenting coaching from the most incredible experts and authors and coaches and speakers and people who are just so much more intelligent than I am when it comes to parenting. And I feel like I've just had such great experiences talking to them, sharing with them our struggles, and helping our parents of school-age kids. So we really focus the conversation on that podcast specifically for parents of school-age kids, because that way we can relate to some of the issues that are going on then.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And why blissful? It has a couple of connotations. So tell us, why did you come up with that name and why that?
Yeah, so the Blissful Parenting Podcast came from a company called Blissful Parenting. And a friend of mine and a mentor and a coach at one point, he had this podcast and he had this business where he was speaking into schools and speaking to parent organizations and coaching parents. And he really wanted to start a podcast, but he felt it would be better if it had a female mom's voice on the podcast. And I had a podcast company and we were managing the podcast. And so I said, hey, I'd love to host the podcast because I love interviewing people and I love the topic. So I think I would really benefit from being the host of the show. And that was 3 years ago. And we've done a lot of episodes since then. And I've just loved being the podcast. But where his podcasting name came from is that it was where the Blissful Parenting name came from, is that it was his goal. He found himself being a dad who had gone through parenting coaching and parenting training, and yet he was still yelling at his kids. And he's like, I have got to, make this more of a blissful parenting experience for all of us in this family. And so his mission, and it became my mission when I joined their company as well, to help 1 million families have a more blissful parenting experience.
That's interesting that came from a man. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I know you're married, but how do you juggle parenting 2 children with parenting 3 podcasts? How do you do that? Like, how does that work? Even?
Yeah, it's been an interesting thing. And that's why, I joke sometimes because I say it's like I'm doing it alone, but I'm not. I do have lots of support from my husband, but I think because it's different when it's a mom who's got a business. It's so hard. It's hard. It's so much harder than a dad who's got a business. And, the dads are awesome, but it's just something like, a lot of the responsibilities still fall onto me as a mom. Right. So, putting kids to bed or doing school activities with kids. And I'm a brownie leader as well. So Girl Guides. And, I love being there for my kids' sports and stuff. So I really built my business and my podcasting around the kids' schedule. So I don't start anything for work until after they've gone to school, and I stop before they come home from school. And so it's really important for me to build my business around those hours and around that time. Now, I put in no other time during the day when they're at school for self-care or for grocery shopping or housekeeping or anything like that. So it's like those things still have to happen outside of those hours.
Yeah.
But at least I can get my business stuff done in the hours when the kids are at school. And it's a lot easier now that they're at school. But for many years, I had my daughter beside me playing on the floor or playing with her toys while I was working on my computer or trying to start a business and trying to get my business going. And, I do have a little bit of regrets that I didn't slow down just a little bit more when they were little. Like I was really pushing hard to put a big boulder of this podcasting business up a big hill. Now that bowl is rolling down the hill really fast. So it's not as much of a time intensity as it was when they were younger. But I do wish I'd slowed down a little bit more and took a little bit more time to enjoy them when they were little, because they're only 7 and 10 now, but man, that went really fast.
Really fast. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So were you always a stay-at-home mom, or did you start the podcasting business as a side hustle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually was an entrepreneur before I had kids. So I actually had a fitness studio in North Vancouver and 7 boot camp locations across the province. And I was already an entrepreneur and busy then. And then as I got pregnant, I was commuting to and from our house a couple times a day to the fitness studio, realizing oh shoot, when this baby comes, we're not going to be able to commute 30, 40 minutes back and forth a couple times a day to this fitness studio. So I closed the studio down and I just continued personal training, in closer to where we had moved to the suburbs. And I was enjoying that a lot. And then one of my mom friends had this brilliant idea. We had babies around the same time, and she thought it would be a really cool idea to have a co-working space with the daycare attached to it. And I was like, yes, heck yes, this is great, great idea. So her and I spent a year and a half looking for the for a property that we could have a daycare on one side of it and a co-working space for the moms on the other side. And this was in 2013. Oh, no, sorry, 2012. This was a little bit ahead of its time as well. At that time, there were no other co-working spaces outside the downtown core area in Vancouver. And we were in the suburbs a bit. And so we were trying to educate people what a co-working space was to begin with, and then trying to find a space where the daycare licensing and the co-working licensing together would cooperate and we'd be able to operate together. And finally, we gave up on the daycare because it was just too many regulations that they weren't ready for this kind of innovation. So we said, forget it. We're going to drop the daycare. And by this time, our kids were old enough to go to preschool. So we sent our kids off to preschool and we opened a co-working space, which we had for many years. And that's where I started the podcasting business from there.
Oh, okay. All right. It's pretty cool. So we're going to switch gears in a bit. But before we do, I have two more questions for you. One, I know you have the podcast, but do you provide any services, coaching or mentoring to moms?
Not specifically to moms in the podcast from the Blissful Parenting Podcast. What we do is we align with other parenting experts that we bring on the show, and then we offer them the opportunity to come and do workshops and for our audience. So we've built a list of parenting parents that are interested in parenting, and we built a list of parenting experts, and we've actually monetized the podcast in a really great way where all the guests that come on the show get the opportunity to put their information into our toolbox, which is for our parents to open and get resources in there. And then we also offer the opportunity for our experts to come back and teach classes to our parents. And we're working on a compilation book later on this year for the parenting program.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is Michellle grateful for today?
Oh my gosh. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to just share my message with some other moms out there. And I really appreciate all the effort and the work that you do and putting this podcast together.
Thank you. All right. And I said two questions, but I have more. So give me one piece of advice for a solo mom, and do it from a perspective of following your dreams or discovering your purpose, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Just because you're a mom now doesn't mean that your dreams have to be put on hold. I think there is a place for your dreams alongside your kids' dreams and being the best mom. And just know that, it's a journey, and enjoy the journey of getting there. It's not just the destination, and take the time to enjoy that path and getting to the dream and the lifestyle that you love.
Yeah, thank you. So it's okay to dream, and it's also okay to follow your dreams, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Can I share a quick story about that?
Yep, for sure.
Okay, so my husband and I, we realized that we were living the Canadian American dream. And one day we woke up to a huge flood in our house. And we had just been talking about how we go to our family cabin every single weekend. We have an amazing weekend. And then we get so sad because we have to leave and come back to the city and go back to work and the next day. And we're like, what are we doing? Like, why don't, we looked at the cabin and we're like, nobody lives here 10 months of the year. We should just stay here and enjoy it. So the morning when we woke up, there was a flood in our house. We were moved out for 6 weeks while the restoration company fixed our house. And we said, well, why don't we try putting up our house for sale and see if it will sell? Turns out it sold 2 days later.
Wow.
And my husband had to quit his job of 17 years. And we moved our whole family over to the Sunshine Coast, which is from where we were living about 3 hours away. And we then moved into our summer cabin, which was completely off the grid, and it had a boat. We had to park our car on one side of the lake and take a boat across to get to the house. And so now we felt like we were living more in alignment with our dreams. Like before, we had gotten the jobs, got the car, had the kids. We're living paycheck to paycheck. We're mortgage poor. We had no fun, no time for money or for freedom or fun or vacation. And we were passing each other at the door every day, switching off from one, looking after the kids during the day to looking after the kids at night so each other could work. And we looked at each other like, this was not our dream. I don't know whose dream this was, but this is not what we signed up for. So
Right.
we said, forget it. And we took that huge, gigantic leap. And luckily for my business and being able to work online, I could work from wherever. So we had that stable revenue coming in, and we're able to make that move and make that change towards following our own dreams.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me. I really admire you that you guys and you're in sync, because that make a difference that, the two of you are on the same page. Otherwise, So
I never thought we would be, though, to be honest. Like, I never thought, like, it was something I was always thinking about. I never thought he would leave his job of 17 years, ever.
Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah.
right time, right moment, I guess. Yeah. And what's it like for the kids?
Oh my gosh, the kids love it. They go to a small school with like 65 kids. They have tons of outdoor space, and they just we call them free range kids now. They run around our property and spend a lot of time outside and live in the lake 7 hours a day in the summer and have a great lifestyle.
Yeah, that must be sweet. Yeah.
The one thing they do complain about, though, is that they can't just run over and go next door and play with the kids. Play with other kids because they live so far away. So we're about 20 minutes away from the next kind of friends. So a little bit more challenging for them that way.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, that's pretty cool, though. I love that. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for coming and talking to us today.
You're welcome. And thank you so much, Jen, for having such an amazing show. And I'm so grateful to have had the honor of being here today with you.
Great. Thank you.
SoloMoms Talk was designed to curate the stories of SoloMoms globally. As a facilitator of this platform, I aim to create a peaceful environment where you can share your heart, feel loved, and get the advice you need. So if this sounds like you, why not RSVP for our next virtual meetup? The link is below. It's where you can retreat from the chaos of your life so you can recharge, connect with other moms, and get answers to your burning questions. Remember, you're not alone, and you don't have to parent in silence.